Everywhere I went around the world, either working for big printing companies or for the companies in the industry who make the equipment that printing companies buy, like printing presses.
Yep.
Everyone struggled to see clearly where am I making or losing money, much less how do we improve it, but just 101.
Ground zero where
Good or bad jobs or products or customers or customer industry, like all these different ways. A lot of companies, small, medium, large, were running blind. There's a lot of, in life, you got death, taxes, gravity, things outside of our control. If we want to be profitable, you have to cover your overhead every month. For me, it's not a passion, it's an obsession to say, how do we move this old industry forward with modern tech and solutions? Because it's so old school. And at the same time, with goal and opportunity to make a positive disruption. I think a lot of ways in life I've been able to have some head starts is through the mentorship and just trying to learn from others' successes or mistakes, and how can I take that knowledge and make the best decisions possible. For me, it's simple. Life is short. I didn't take this risk to play it small. So I'm in this to help move a huge industry forward, move the needle. So I'm not interested in having 100 companies using Print Profit. This is to the thousands is my dream and aspirations, and around the world.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to the 10th episode of the American Dream podcast. Last week, we had Jason Shores out from Hastings. He was a sales guy. He gave us a lot of insight, a couple books to maybe read, some different tactics on improving your sales skills and just how to be honest and just, certain ways to improve your sales. So it was good to have him out. A lot of good takeaways there. This week, we have Nick with Print Profit.
Yeah, well, we're glad to have Nick here today. Share his experience in the printing world. He's got a very cool, history. And we look forward to hearing about that, kind of how you got to, owning Print Profit and developing that. Traveled the world, done a lot of good things. So without further, I'll let you kind of share kind of your backstory.
Yeah, great to be here, guys. So Nick Gawreluk, born and raised in St. Paul, Minnesota, and fell into the printing industry by coincidence. And looking back, I'm 34, but man, that was a good coincidence to go to Roseville High School, just your basic public high school. But little did I know, signing up for classes, math, science, t-shirt printing. Let me think for a second. That sounds pretty intriguing, but this high school had basically a mid-sized printing company in it. Think of it like you got auto shop, maybe. What else do you have?
Woods or motors or...
Roseville High School had printing.
Printing,
Yeah. And then, just growing up Minnesota, you guys know, like raking leaves, shoveling, mowing grass in the summer. I always had side hobbies and hustles. And then that just translated to printing. And that kicked off about 15-year journey of traveling the world and getting a lot of experience.
Aside from like doing the printing and stuff in the school, did you do it after school as well? Or like after the high school and stuff?
Yep.
So worked in other print shops or
throughout the summers.
Yep.
So in the Twin Cities, you can work at the Minnesota State Fair, maybe at a fast food place. But I'm like, man, this printing is interesting.
Yep.
So I worked for big commercial printers every summer.
Sure.
And that was a good chance to make money, roll up my sleeves, and see how do the big boys do it.
So kind of doing the printing and everything in school and then a little bit after school. What made you kind of jump into like the finance side of the printing world? That's not your typical avenue. Most people in the printing world, they end up starting a print shop in their garage or basement or something, kind of like how we did. And then they, develop it into a full print shop. You took an alternative route. So like kind of what led you to make that decision?
Yeah, I had a lot of experiences helping run printing companies, help lead sales teams, all different aspects of the business side.
Sure.
And the numbers always fascinated me, just learning more about it. I don't want to say it came easy to me, but it was sort of a puzzle and a mystery. And the more I rolled up the sleeves and dug into it, it was intriguing. Some challenges, some opportunities, but yeah, I kind of just went down a rabbit hole. And then I did my MBA in Germany, focusing on finance and accounting.
Yep.
So that really helped me for the first time in life formally study it, aside from just being a passion.
Sure.
So were you the one kind of in charge looking at like your P&L statements and like pricing out each job to kind of, calculate GP and net and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. involved in a lot of that.
That's all you ran. Oh, that's pretty. That's the numbers we've talked a lot of times is the most important part to any business. If you're making sure you know each and every those numbers. What was, I guess, some of the big takeaways when you were working with other businesses? What was like the one thing you found maybe in a business that you're like, this is a problem, we need to fix this?
Everywhere I went around the world, either working for big printing companies or for the companies in the industry who make the equipment that printing companies buy, like the printing presses.
Yep.
Everyone struggled to see clearly, where am I making or losing money?
Sure.
Much less how do we improve it, but just 101.
Ground zero where
Good or bad jobs or products or customers or like all these different ways. A lot of companies, small, medium, large, were running blind.
Everyone thinks more is better, but more isn't always better because sometimes you're taking on more that isn't a good customer or a good type of work. And
And if you can't see it clearly, you're running off a gut feeling and best instincts. But
what you think is making money, or so you've worked for print shops and on the actual supplier side.
Exactly.
Of things. Okay.
Yep.
Did you see any? Were they very similar? Are there any differences in between suppliers in that, or are you basically looking at the same things? Basically customers are ordering and same type of thing, or?
It's been interesting seeing both sides of the industry. On the supplier side, how do you add value and help their businesses be successful, and that helps your business?
Yep.
Also, it's a lot easier on the supplier side to tell the printing companies, that's, just do it this way. But
Sure.
then going on the printer side, rolling up the sleeves and day to day having to execute and deploy, whole nother story.
Sure.
So
More sophistication
dealing with their customers, but it's been good having both perspectives.
So when you're kind of looking at the numbers, what's like one of the first things, we talk a lot about knowing your numbers on the podcast here, and it's kind of the fundamentals of running a business. If someone were to look at the numbers, it's confusing because you can just look at them, but like knowing what to do with that is a completely different story. So, if a business out there is struggling with kind of making things making ends meet, or just looking at their numbers and knowing where to start, like what would be the first thing you would kind of break down?
Yeah. So the printing industry is capital intensive. You have a lot of overhead. So having an opportunity to work with Blake, we're really starting ourselves going through a journey of, understanding that overhead.
Yep.
Because that's what keeps you up at night, right?
Yep. Those are the fixed you have to make costs, no matter what. Yep.
There's a lot of, in life, you got death, taxes, gravity, things outside of our control. If we want to be profitable, you have to cover your overhead every month.
Sure.
So just 101, do you know that overhead to a T? What all goes into it?
Yep.
That's a great starting point, because that's sort of your big hurdle to getting to.
You might be able to find some stuff you can cut out right away, and they maybe are paying for you didn't even realize it, because it just happens every single month, and you just keep on grinding away.
Exactly. And then it becomes, numbers. I'm on both sides where it's like, okay, boring, not so sexy, but at the same time, that's where a lot of the magic happens. So we know that overhead, and then it becomes really creative to say, let's roll up our sleeves. And how do we drive enough profitable sales to get where we're looking to go?
Yep.
And in that process, man, it's sales, marketing, all these different parts of the business and levers you can pull to get there.
Getting into the nitty gritty of the numbers, that's where it kind of becomes, I'm sure, a little bit, you work across the U.S. for the most part, and I'm sure every market's a little bit different to some extent and some of those expectations.
What are those levers? Like, what are the kind of main levers that you'd be able to pull in a business? They're kind of the categories of them, I guess I'd say.
A lot of times the fixed costs, many businesses are running lean and mean, right? Versus just spending
willy-nilly.
Not too often I see that. So then, if there's not a lot to trim from a fixed cost perspective, then it's kind of looking at, hey, the cost to produce every job, is there a lot of waste in the process? So in the printing world, are you messing up shirts and having to order more?
Sure.
Or
maybe you can really isolate those problems and make those adjustments as you need. Instead of kind of, like I think you mentioned before, that gut feeling of like, well, we usually screw up about one or maybe two shirts and going from there.
So if there's not a lot of waste in the process, then it comes really creative, like what we're working on, Blake, of what do we want to produce? Who do we want to sell to? At what price? And all of those different things.
Yep.
So a lot of levers.
Yep.
What are some of the tools that you use? It's easy, like, or myself, to get really caught up in like your day to day. You get grinding, you get busy, and it's easy to kind of let the numbers just kind of be. So what are some tools that you try to implement for people to make it more in your face or stay disciplined to those numbers?
I had to go down a crazy journey of building a software because it did not exist in my industry.
Yeah.
I wish there was a simpler path. But really, truly, what Print Profit is, so it's a profitability software that helps serve the printing industry. And for a lot of print shops around the country, they have QuickBooks, like a lot of small businesses. And then sometimes they have a software that helps just the day-to-day business, but there's nothing in between. So that's what I created, that just takes that data and makes it into a clear story of this is how we're doing, here's how we can improve.
Sure.
Yeah.
And does that integrate with other CRMs and stuff like that in the print shop?
Yep. And that's so critical because we need the data. Yeah.
Yep.
Kind of automatically feed into. I know it's a huge thing that I've been working through, is just trying to integrate into different softwares, and sometimes there's an easy link, sometimes it doesn't, and then every clunk you have like that, it's basically a step back. Just be so nice to have something like that that feeds in all of those numbers and
Gives you a clear vision with, I mean, the little bit of deep diving we've done in there, it's freaking sweet how you can look at the heat maps and the time and what they're ordering, when they're ordering, and how much they're ordering. Like,
We're going to work.
Yeah, it paints a picture that you can make actionable, steps to improve your business starting day one. So, yeah, I think that's awesome. And yeah, I wish there was more solutions out there for other industries as well. Like, I don't really see that much out there. So I think you're really onto something with all that, and being able to put those pieces together is huge.
coming into roofing anytime soon?
Yeah.
I was gonna ask for Blake and I coming from the printing space, but does anything like Print Profit exist in your industry?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had, Blake kind of gave me a quick high overview of the software, and some of it, so it'd be definitely interesting to sit down and like actually see what data it's, segregating, but short answer is no.
Okay.
And, we have a CRM, we use Job Nimbus, for our stuff. It's great in the, sales estimating, all that kind of follow-up appointments. Great in there, solid. We're working on kind of the two shortfalls or the lead intake side. So kind of your automations, calling, follow-up, lead nurturing, all that kind of stuff, which is important, right? So it's definitely lacking there. And then your project costing. How much money are you making on each and every job? No different than the print, same ideas, right? Like we have material costs, we have labor costs, and breaking down all of those so what, maybe you gotta make a change. There's maybe a portion, we do all exteriors, so windows might be very lacking in, GP. We need to either fix our price or just not do windows anymore, and stuff like that. And that stuff intrigues me, but it does not currently do those types of things. So
Noted.
yeah.
I got my hands full of printing, but
Yeah, well, you get bored, then you can jump on over and get you started.
That'd be pretty intricate to try and have it serve two different markets.
actually, yes and no. So from a software perspective, it's all widgets.
Sure.
Like literally, as I get to know the area here, I tell Blake I stop at a coffee shop on the way down. Could literally plug into the coffee shop's what do you call it? Not terminal.
Their POS system.
POS system and fire it up. So it's really agnostic in terms of what we're producing, it's widgets. But we know the subject matter expertise in the industry, that's so critical.
Sure, yeah. With all your experience in the printing world, that's where it makes sense to excel in that side of things. Kind of expanding on that a little bit. So many businesses get blinded by the opportunities that come arising. I've been in that situation many times. It's like you see the dollars coming at you and you're like, oh, I got to go chase this and I got to go chase that. Like, what was how are you able to kind of put your head down and not chase all these rabbit holes and go after like roofing and all these other markets, sticking to the printing side? What was one thing that maybe helped you stay focused on that side of things?
It's what I know. but B, really that's where my passion is. So I love this industry. It's allowed me to see the world,
Sure.
provide for a family, and I love meeting the people behind the businesses. Why do they take their own risks? What are they looking to achieve? So it's a great industry, but we're challenged. So the average net profit margin in the United States for printers is 2%.
That's tight.
Razor thin. And we're
Yep.
one or two bad decisions away from closing up. So for me, it's not a passion, it's an obsession to say, how do we move this old industry forward
Yep.
with modern tech and solutions, because it's so old school. And at the same time, a goal and opportunity to make a positive disruption.
Sure. That's important, and you got to have your numbers really dialed if you're working at a 2%. I mean, like you said, that's pretty wild. Have you met some mentors? And I'm sure you have. You've met a lot of people across the world, but what are some big takeaways, I guess, that you've had, from mentors along the way to help steer where you've gotten today?
Mentorship's been huge for me. A lot of it started as that kind of naive kid in high school,
Yep.
where I would email or meet CEOs of printing companies and ask if I could buy them lunch in high school. And I still have relationships to this day at 34 with those same CEOs who have seen me from, pimple-faced kid, 15, through
20 years later.
man with the family. But I think a lot of ways in life I've been able to have some head starts is through the mentorship and just trying to learn from others' successes or mistakes, and how can I take that knowledge and make the best decisions possible. So there's been so many people throughout my journey and still today that are supporting me and helping push me in the right direction.
Yeah, no, I think that's a huge thing to try to gravitate to is those. And the biggest thing too, and I know like what you said, and I picked up on it, is, buying them lunches as a high school kid. I mean, there's so much of that.
And it was McDonald's.
Yeah, hey, that's what you get.
Yep.
You're 15.
Yep. You still stood out to them though, compared to everybody else, and being
Most people, what they want, right? Like that's the biggest thing. That's the misnomer with mentorships or asking for help. They just want. What can you give to me? Type of mentality, and I think that's just such a huge takeaway of providing that value first. It can be just buying McDonald's. I mean, it's a small little thing, but those little gestures are huge. And a CEO that really money isn't the driver of it, right? It's more the character behind who's doing those things. So,
and I think they saw that I was a sponge, and I would take the advice and bring it to life, and even where I can now, paying it forward and mentoring others.
Sure.
So, on the podcast. We appreciate that, and that's what we try to do, for others is do that. So.
Yeah, I bet a lot of those mentors got some excitement out of kind of seeing their hard work fruition into like a young kid, and
big time. They poured a lot into me. So
yeah, that's awesome. On the print profit side, in our first couple meetings that we've had, you talk a lot about the contribution margin. I'm sure a lot of people out there don't necessarily understand what that means. Could you give a little background and maybe on what that entails?
The numbers are traditionally difficult, and I don't like that. It feels like for me a lot of have and have not in terms of the knowledge. I'm not saying everyone has to be a CPA or a passion about it, but as I've learned about business and the numbers side, a lot of the good business basics are just like simple principles. So we'll break down contribution margin 101, and don't exit out of this podcast. Bear with me. It's worth it. But business 101 says you've got fixed overhead costs every month.
Yep.
We want to get to profit land, obviously. So how do we do that? Well, when you look at whatever you're selling, whether it's a good or a service, when you subtract out what are the true costs to produce that. So, t-shirt printing, keeping it simple, you got the cost of the shirt, maybe some ink, you ship it to the customer. What's left over when you take sales minus those costs, that's what you have to cover your overhead. So think of it like a thermometer. Every job that Blake ships out of here, sales minus his costs, he's got something left over, and it adds up and it adds up. And the minute it's past his overhead, he's in the profit. So, on construction side, let's say you have certain labor, insurance costs, salaries, et cetera, that's X per month. And then every job, when you take out the cost to produce it, same thing. Your thermometer, you're tracking it throughout the month. And then once you've got past that, you're into profitability.
Sure.
So that's like 101, kind of what contribution margin is, but it's really powerful in the fact that it's simple and it's really truthful, where a lot of these concepts of what are costs and what are profit, it can get hairy real quick.
Yeah. But I find a lot of people too, they, how people calculate some of the, you take a term like gross profit or even net profit. Those can be calculated. I didn't even realize how many definitions of either of those.
Oh my
What
gosh.
costs are coming out of each one of those, and then numbers needs to be skewed. And some people that get flashy with it or that want to talk about how much they make, those numbers are so easily skewed, or even EBITDA. When you're talking about the value of businesses and getting into all that, like they can get so carried away. And it's just, to me, it's, the real true business owners are the ones that are like, we talk about here is getting into the numbers, showing exactly what the line items is, understanding, every single, your overhead costs, what are they, and understanding a P&L statement, which quite honestly, I mean, a year ago you'd ask me what that is, and I wouldn't be able to tell you, right?
It's a journey. It's not an overnight.
Yep. Exactly. But those numbers are just so important, and how you categorize and make those, how you factor those numbers in.
I thought it was kind of cool, like in our first couple meetings, is how you look at fixed costs. It's a different way of thinking, because I think a lot of things in business are more fixed than a guy would think. Just thinking like the ink and stuff, you're not going to break that down for every single job about every ounce you use. You just take how much you spent for the whole year and you kind of divide that out per month as like your fixed monthly expense. So that helps, get a little bit better vision on like, okay, you need all these things to produce the job. The only variable in there is going to be like the blanks for the screen printing world, or like the shingles for your world. And then just calculating based off those and grouping more into that fixed cost than grouping everything into the variable side of things.
And I think, for whoever's listening, thinking about business you're in, company you work for, when you talk about what's the true cost of a job, I've spent years studying this. But we'll go back to the t-shirt analogy. Like if Blake runs one more job, his insurance doesn't get more expensive. The salary he pays his workers is very much X days per week, X many hours. That stays the same. There's so many different costs of his business that they're much more part of the overhead versus job. And we're printing companies worldwide get into a trap as overthinking, over-engineering, crazy spreadsheets, and they lose sight of what are my costs.
Sure.
And then they're selling jobs thinking they're making a profit, but it's a mirage.
Yep.
And that's a death spiral. It's really scary. So just encouraging for everyone, go back to 101. What's truth? Keep it simple. And I think that's a good North Star.
Sure. Is that one of the probably the biggest things that you see as failures, or like when you even like the first thing with like take on with Blake, when you first meet with a business, that kind of very similar to what you see in businesses?
Yeah. Common element where QuickBooks is telling me I lost money, but every single quote I do for a job says I'm profitable.
Sure.
So I'm pulling out my hair because I don't know what's truth and I can't tie it out.
Sure.
Not a fun place to be.
And the solution isn't always raising your price, because if it's that balance of like raising the prices so you make money, but not raising it so much you're losing customers, because you still have to get to that fixed number at the end of the month, which is the contribution of each job getting you to that goal.
Yep.
So we haven't quite got to that part in our meetings and stuff, but I'm excited to kind of get to those next steps and really make a strategy and a plan to make a change. So
the pricing topic is huge.
Yeah, it's a wormhole. Yeah.
You work with a lot of businesses across the United States. Obviously, how many years has Print Profit been established?
2023, I started the LLC, left a big corporate job in the printing industry. It took a lot of years of just consulting, working with a lot of different companies. The software was launched September, October of 24. So not many months.
Sure. Awesome. Well, that's obviously you're very knowledgeable in the space, and I think you have big things. So what kind of is your goals, or where are you trying to get, or what's going to get you where you want to go?
Yeah, for me, it's simple. Life is short. I didn't take this risk to play it small. Yep. So I'm in this to help move a huge industry forward. move the needle. So I'm not interested in having 100 companies using Print Profit. This is to the thousands is my dream and aspirations, and around the world.
That's going to be a journey.
It's not overnight, but that's
Yeah.
the vision. And this industry is huge. It needs the help. So I'd say shame on me if I dared play it small.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome.
You got the software, you got the legwork done, right? Like it's the same kind of idea if you have that playbook right.
Scale.
Just repeat it, right? And once you have that dialed in, so
Yep.
no, I think that's awesome to hear. We're obviously inspired by the similar things, and so it's always fun getting in the room with other people that have those big dreams and want to make it
And
big leagues.
and a lot of these topics that we're talking about, all the service-based businesses, the fundamentals are like really a lot alike, like
true.
the roofing and the printing and, even in going out and cutting grass and landscaping, all that stuff, like where you make money and where you lose money and how all of that stuff flows and how you like the workflows with the customers are all very similar. So
It's true.
don't think because you're not in the printing world, you can't apply all of these tips and stuff. So
Yep. Great
Here in
observation.
another year or so, you're going to be in the roofing space anyway.
Yeah. We just started.
yeah.
Take out another journey, right? I think those are great things to kind of talk about. I guess if someone's just kind of getting started in business, again, whether it's service based or in the printing world, what's a piece of advice that you would give them? Again, just starting the business and kind of getting things rolling.
Yeah. Like I said, you don't have to be a CPA, but surrounding yourself with either people who are the subject matter experts or rolling up your sleeves and reading and learning yourself. That's so powerful, especially for your own business.
Yep.
So like for me, creating my LLC, a lot of stuff online is so easy. Click a button, take care of it for you. But it's like, man, this is my business. This is my livelihood. I want to figure out the paperwork and what does this mean? Same thing for taxes, right?
Sure.
I don't care to be the CPA, but I want to know what's going on.
Yep.
So,
To be dangerous.
yeah, I think that would be a great starting point for whoever's listening if they're getting started. But I think we can all agree, like just knowing the lay of the land of the important parts of the numbers, that's huge. That's your livelihood and how you set yourself up for success. So don't downplay that part.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Any books that you've read, kind of, you take me as someone that definitely does research and does all that. Obviously, you have your MBA. What do you have any books that have really aspired to you kind of switch from that corporate to more of the entrepreneurial spirit?
I've read so many books. I love driving, listening to podcasts or audiobooks.
Yep.
A lot of what Alex Hormozy's doing with his various books of deals that are so good that people can't pass up. I think that's interesting, just how you creatively structure offers.
$1 million offer.
That's it.
Yep.
Yeah. I still want to buy the physical book.
Physical copy. Yep. Yep.
I got the ebook. There's one from the Harvard Business School. I'll have to let you guys know after the podcast, but it's really like everything you need to know about finance, but simplified that anyone off the street can pick up and have a chance. I found that book inspiring as well.
Sure. Definitely keeping it simple and
Keeping it simple.
Bring it back to the
Just
basics.
tell me what I need to know.
Yep.
Well, I think that is definitely a lot of good insights on the profitability and kind of what you bring to the printing world. Definitely, some great takeaways. Keeping it simple and doing all those things is just such a huge part. People like to overcomplicate things, and then you kind of get lost in the jet
Way
wash
too much.
of that. So definitely great topics there to follow up on.
Yeah, I think that those are definitely some big points and some easy things to start implementing in your business. Just looking at those numbers and controlling those fixed overhead costs is huge. We'll probably have another episode where we hopefully have a little success story based off what you're doing to help me out with the print shop and stuff.
It'd be real fun.
Aside from that, where do people find you if they're a print shop or maybe even have a question on like finance side of things?
Yeah. Printprofit.com is the website, and you can book a 30-minute meeting anytime. My calendar is up there. And if you're curious about the topic, want to learn more, maybe have a different opinion on the matter, whether or not you're from print, reach out. Love the discussion. At the end of the day, I'm learning as well. So
Sure.
I welcome any and all connections.
Heck yeah. Well, I appreciate you being a guest here today, Nick. I look forward to working with you in our little journey down the finance side of things and the printing. Yeah, I'm excited to really get to the nitty gritty on all that. Yeah, so that's kind of where we're at for this episode. Remember, today's a good day for a good day.
Yes, thanks everyone for tuning in.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.